This is Grace Notes. I'm Alan Button, and it's our privilege today to have with us here in the studio Haley Smith. Haley is a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and currently serving with the Peace Corps in Senegal. Haley, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Haley, if we could, tell us a little bit about how you ended up in the Peace Corps by going back maybe to your early days in high school. Haley, by the way, is from Lillington, North Carolina, and ended up in West Africa. How'd that happen in terms of your education, Haley?
Well, I think it started a little bit when I was in high school. I went to Harnett Central, and I took a world literature class and learned about South Africa and apartheid, and I think that kind of started my interest in things global. And then on to UNC, majored in global studies and focused on Africa. And then I had a few experiences in college where I was able to travel to Africa and even to Senegal specifically. All of those things together created an interest for me.
What kind of courses did you end up taking at Chapel Hill, Africa related?
I took a lot of African studies courses, but I also, because a global studies major, you take courses in a lot of different departments. So I took courses in anthropology and language courses and political science courses.
You said that during your time at Chapel Hill, you had opportunity to, I guess, go to Africa?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about that. Between your sophomore and junior year?
Yeah. So between those years, I did a summer internship with FCA, where
FCA is
Fellowship of Christian Athletes, right? And I went with a group there to South Africa, and we mainly did sports camps for sort of underprivileged kids that live in townships and poor parts of South Africa. And then there was obviously a goal of ministering to those kids as well, kind of through the avenue of sports.
And then the following summer, you went back to Africa.
Yeah, that's true. And so that summer I studied abroad in Senegal in West Africa.
And that was a UNC program?
And that was through UNC, yeah.
What did you do after graduating from Chapel Hill? And you graduated, by the way, in what year?
I graduated in 2015.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you went where? Then?
And then after I graduated, I went to Washington, D.C. for a year to work, as I was in the middle of applying to the Peace Corps, which does usually take roughly a year to do.
It's a year-long application process.
For most people, it is, yeah.
What did you do in Washington besides start the Peace Corps application process?
So I spent about half of my time interning at a small nonprofit called Youth Service America, and their main goal is to kind of fund youth service projects nationally, and then they also have an international aspect as well. And then I spent the other half of my year there tutoring at a lower income elementary school.
It sounds like you had some great experience as a foundation for your Peace Corps endeavors.
Yeah, they were great experiences, and I think they were helpful in starting me towards the Peace Corps.
Well, we'll come back in a couple of minutes to what exactly it is you're doing in Senegal. But before we go there, you've identified a song that is special to you, Carolina in My Mind, by the inestimable James Taylor. As you know, I think, Haley, we play this song a lot on our station. Tell us why you've selected that one.
I chose this song because I grew up here in North Carolina, so I've heard the song a lot as well. And at UNC, it's played pretty often after sporting events, and a lot of the time it's kind of the unofficial song of UNC. And I think the more I'm away from home, the more meaning this song has for me, and I think that's why I chose it.
In fact, that's consistent with what we understand was James Taylor's motivation in writing it in the first place, longing to be back in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Well, let's hear the song, Carolina in My Mind by James Taylor.
In my mind, I'm gone to Carolina. I'm gone. Say nice things about me, 'cause I'm gone, south and gone.
That was Carolina in My Mind by James Taylor. This is Grace Notes. If you're just joining us, our guest today is Haley Smith. Haley is with the Peace Corps in Senegal. Tell us, Haley, how you ended up in Senegal.
Well, when I first applied, I was slated to go to Mali in June of 2016. And then Mali experienced a terror attack in their capital. And so Peace Corps had to shut their program down for obvious safety reasons. So then I was given 2 new choices of where to go. And Senegal was one of those choices, and I knew I liked the country from my brief experience and
Your study abroad.
from my study abroad, and I decided I wanted to give it a longer term chance. So that's what I did, and that was a September departure, so it was a few months later.
So you've been there now for about 15 months, I guess.
Yep, just about 15.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us how you spend your day. What do you do there?
Well, it definitely varies because I'm an agriculture volunteer. My work is not always super defined, and so...
Is that an official title, agriculture volunteer? Is that what they call you?
Yeah, I think my actual title is urban agriculture something. I'm not sure what the word is.
It sounds like you don't carry business cards around with your title on it.
No, I don't think most people really care what my title is, so it's okay. Yeah, so agriculture volunteers don't always have the most definition to their work because they're not like an education volunteer who goes to a school every day. So, I mean, most of my days I get up and have breakfast and do that normal routine, and then in the mornings I'll either spend time just talking and sitting with my family or another family, or I'll go to a farmer that I work with, and one of the farmers I work with is he's called a master farmer, and he is a guy who has demonstrated that he is a hard worker, and he's willing to adapt new techniques that Peace Corps promotes, and so they'll fund him and give him money to plant things on his land.
So he sort of ends up serving as a model or an example to other farmers?
Exactly. He's kind of put in place there to hold trainings and get other people to implement the techniques he's implementing, ideally. So we'll work with him. I work with him a pretty good amount, planning trainings and just kind of working in his garden or his fields or whatever.
You mentioned your family. What do you mean by family?
Every volunteer in Senegal has a host family or a family that they live with, just because that's the structure of Senegal. Everyone lives with the usually big family. And so we're set up in what's called a compound, and it's really just kind of a fenced-in area that usually has a few buildings. And so I have kind of basically 2 families that I live with in this fenced-in area. And I have my own hut with my own bathing area and toilet and a little backyard, and then I have one of my mom's huts next to me, and then sort of across the compound is my other mom, and she lives in kind of a cement building, and that's kind of our setup.
What arrangements do you have for water?
So for water, I kind of live on the edge of a big river delta, so all the water is pretty salty that comes out of the spigots. So we have a spigot next to our common bathing area, and that's where the family gets water for bathing or cooking. And then so it's salty, we can't drink it, and so we pull that water out of a well nearby. And those are my 2 water situations.
Well, speaking of water, actually, you've identified another song that has something to do with water. Rivers and Roads. Tell us about that.
Yeah. This song is one of my personal favorites, and again, I think has more meaning for me as I've been away from home. And it's by The Head and the Heart, which is one of my favorite bands, I guess, kind of a folk band.
Folk rock indie band.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And the song kind of speaks a little bit about being separated from friends or family and kind of that desire to be near them again and the hope that you'll see them again soon. And I've just enjoyed it more as I've been away, I guess.
You have access to music then where you are in some fashion.
Yeah, I have the Spotify app on my phone.
Uh-huh.
And I have Spotify Premium, so I can download songs and I can listen to them whenever I want.
Does that mean that if you download the Life 103.1 app, you'll be able to listen over there?
Probably.
Uh-huh.
I should try.
We'll have to check that out with
Yeah.
you. Well, let's hear the song, Rivers and Roads by The Head and the Heart.
Rivers and roads, rivers till I reach you.
That was Rivers and Roads by The Head and the Heart. Our guest today is Haley Smith. I'm Alan Button, here with Grace Notes, and we've been talking with Haley about her Peace Corps experience. Haley, we left off talking a little bit about your daily activities. How do those activities fit into the broader Peace Corps priorities for Senegal and such countries?
Well, for Peace Corps Senegal, specifically, I guess, for the agriculture sector, there are two kind of main initiatives that we're encouraged to pursue while we're volunteers. And so the first is the Master Farm program. And typically there's, like the farmer I described, there's one of those near a lot of agriculture volunteers. And so they're encouraged to work with that farmer. And the other initiative is the Seed Extension Initiative. And the basis of that is mostly to provide high-quality, drought-resistant varieties of seeds, the crops that farmers grow in Senegal, like corn, millet, beans, and to provide those at no cost to farmers in the area and just kind of mostly monitor the progress of how the seeds do and how the farmers like them and if they're receptive to them and they're willing to implement new techniques, agricultural techniques, especially ones that are more kind of adaptable to climate change because climate change is affecting regions like the Sahel pretty intensely.
Uh-huh.
So those are the two major things that the agriculture program is surrounded by, but there's plenty of other like smaller projects that Peace Corps volunteers can do, and there's plenty of opportunity to do things like teach English or work in schools, work on health projects, like anything you're interested in or anything your community has a need for, you're totally open to do that as well and work on those areas.
I gather that those kinds of things, those sort of unplanned or unscheduled things, come up as you develop relationships with people.
Yeah, that's definitely true. From my experience, just working at like the middle school in my town, I've gotten to know an English teacher there, and he has been really motivated and really interested in working with me. And obviously it's not all agriculture related, and he's really interested in exposing his students to a native English speaker and trying to get them more motivated and interested in what they're learning about, which I think is a really unique opportunity for both of us.
Uh-huh. Speaking of being a native English speaker, it strikes me that you probably stand out in other ways, too.
Yes.
Our listeners can't see Haley right now in the studio, but Haley is fair-skinned and blonde, and I guess
Yes.
blue eyes.
Yep, that's true.
Tell us about how you've been received in terms of your very different racial background.
Yeah, so unsurprisingly, pretty much everyone in Senegal is pretty dark-skinned, and when they see someone that looks different, they do definitely point it out. There is a word, I think in probably every country I've heard, and in a lot of different countries in Africa, that's used to describe a white person or even just someone that looks different, like a light-skinned black person. So they use the word tubab, and
Tubab.
it's not even necessarily meant derogatorily anymore, but it's just sort of that signifier of like, oh, there's a different looking person. And so it's really annoying, but it's not necessarily meant like with malice.
It's annoying because it identifies
You as the different, and children specifically, if they see you from a distance, will just shout it until you are right in front of them and you can tell them what your name is. But considering the colonialist background that Senegal has, there's surprisingly very little like animosity towards seeing a different person. They're just interested, and they're obviously going to point it out. And that takes some getting used to not have any anonymity, because you can easily have that in America if you want it. But you can't in Senegal.
You're not anonymous,
especially
there.
not in my town of 3,000 people. You just stick out. I stick out like a sore thumb, and people can see me everywhere I go.
Let me take us back as we draw to a conclusion here to where we sort of started or could have started. Why did you join the Peace Corps in the first place in terms of your own personal motivation?
I think a lot of the reason that I joined was based on sort of the way I was raised. My dad, from a pretty early age, he would get me involved in mission trips and service trips in my community or out into different states. And I think just having, I guess, passion for service and desire to not only meaningfully help people, but also get to know people in kind of that way that you can't really otherwise. Once I discovered that the Peace Corps existed, I think it just kind of felt like the right fit.
Do you have thoughts on where you might go, what you might do after the Peace Corps?
I don't have super solid thoughts yet, but I think throughout my time so far in Senegal, I've really enjoyed learning the language, but learning about language and how people interact using languages and body language or the lack of language that I have, and people's desire to learn English. And so I've kind of gotten a bit of an interest in linguistics, or potentially like teaching English as a second language when I come back, something along those lines.
Very good. Of course, we wish you well, Haley.
Thank you.
And look forward to hearing where you go and what you end up doing. Tell us about this other song that you've identified, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing.
I chose the last song because I love hymns. I grew up listening to them, singing and playing them.
Playing them. You're a piano player.
I am a piano player. I think that my faith has definitely been a big part of my upbringing and into my adult life. And hymns have always given me a certain sense of joy and comfort. And I think those are the main reasons.
Particularly in a country like Senegal, I suppose. It's, you were telling me, largely Muslim before we came in the studio.
It is 98% Muslim, I think.
Tell us about Sufjan Stevens, the version that you've selected. Did I say his name correctly?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he's a folk singer, I think he would qualify as. And he's a Christian as well. And I enjoy a lot of his songs because he stays pretty open about his faith and how it's guided him where he is today, and open about his struggles. The song is on his Christmas album, and I really enjoy his Christmas album.
Very good. Well, Haley, it has been a real treat having you here. Thank you for taking the time out of your short time home to spend some time with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's hear the song, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing, by Sufjan Stevens.
Fixed upon it, mount of thy unchanging love.
You've been listening to Grace Notes, a special program here on Life 103.1 featuring people who may be relatively unknown, but who meet life's challenges in ways that brighten the lives of those around them. Our producer is Will Robinson. I'm Alan Button, and we invite you to join all of us here at the station again next Friday at 5:30 for Grace Notes on Life 103.1.